just wanted to welcome you to this online event of music with my guest, Zlatomir Fung, an American cello virtuoso and the latest gold medalist of the Tchaikovsky International Music Competition in Moscow. Many of you might already know he will be featured on Master Players next season to perform his Delaware debut recital.
Thank you for being here. And today we're going to discuss sort of my musical life and particularly my journey to the Tchaikovsky competition and what's happened since then, and take a look at some performances from the past. So.
That's great. Where are you from originally?
Well, so I was born in Ithaca, New York, and I spent some of my childhood in Corvallis, Oregon. But since 2008, my family has lived in Westboro, Massachusetts.
I see. Is that where you are right now, or?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Right. I have our first video to share. We sent it the other day. Would you share with us this recording? Where is this from?
This first clip is from the finals of the Tchaikovsky competition, which took place last June 2019. And this was my performance of the Rococo variations by Tchaikovsky for cello and orchestra. Yeah, this is the final variation, the seventh variation, which is the most virtuosic.
Is this part of the competition, or was it part of the winner's concert?
This was in the competition, so this was part of my final round performance.
So this is a nerve-wracking moment in your career, one of them.
Yes, I would say so.
Okay, great. Wow. When do you graduate from Juilliard?
So I will graduate next May in 2021.
Excellent. That's great. So I wanted you to share with the audience, many of us might not know the history of the Tchaikovsky competition. You know, who are judges? How do you qualify to get to Moscow to perform, in how many rounds, and what are the prices? Do you get money? Do you get performances? Would you share that with us, please?
Sure, of course. So the Tchaikovsky competition has a pretty substantial history. I believe the first edition of the competition was held in 1958, sort of at the height of the Cold War. And it was quite a sensation when the American pianist Van Cliburn took the first prize, as some of you may know. And since then, it's been one of the sort of preeminent international music competitions. And the selection process involves sending a recording of yourself and uploading it to YouTube or another video sharing platform. And then among all the applicants, 25 are selected to travel to Russia to perform live. And in the competition itself, there are 3 rounds. First round, a second round, both of which are recital rounds, and then the final round, which is a performance with orchestra. And the clip you just saw was a part of that. Yeah.
Great.
And as far as the prizes go, since you asked, there is a monetary prize. I believe the first prize came with 30,000 US dollars, but I would say more valuable is just the exposure and the publicity and sort of the connections that you can make through the competition.
I hope you spent all 30,000 before the market crash. But I'm happy for you. That's wonderful. I wanted to share another poll question from you. Actually, that I thought that's a great question for the audience. Please answer this as soon as possible. Which American was the first person to win the gold medal in the cello division of the Tchaikovsky International Competition? Please answer this, and we'll announce the answer very soon. So the sound of the cello, I have to say, has some magical power. It's so beautiful and it's so close to the human voice range. I have another video to share with the audience. Would you share with us the story behind this video of music by Bloch?
Absolutely. So this is a performance from a recital that I gave last year in February 2019, at the Merkin Concert Hall in New York, and this was my New York recital debut. And for the program, I had wanted to play this piece by Ernst Bloch, which was originally written for violin, the Baal Shem Suite. And I wanted to play the entire thing on cello, because the second movement, the Nigun movement, is often played on cello, but the outer movements are not so often performed on cello. So this is the first movement, Vidui, which is sort of a very moving lament. So I hope you enjoy it.
Great, that's beautiful. How old were you when you began cello study?
So I was actually 3.5 years old when I began to play the cello, and the first couple of years were, slow, but they have to be when you're that young. It's just mainly learning how to sit still and hold the cello between my legs. Well, actually, for the first maybe 10 years that I was playing, it was never really on my horizon to become a professional. But something changed when I was around the ages of 12 or 13. And at that time, I was going to, for the first time, I was going to these more intense summer programs for string players. and I was surrounded by a lot of people who were very passionate about playing instruments, and I was being exposed to extraordinary teachers who were sort of opening new doors and worlds and ways of thinking, um, exposing new ways of thinking to me. And I remember I came home after, I can't remember exactly which summer it was, probably 2011 or 12, and I told my parents, I think I want to be a cellist.
Wow, that's great. So we have the answer from the previous question. Nathaniel Rosen was the first American cellist to win the Tchaikovsky competition back in 1978 during the Cold War. And then he now lives in Japan with his wife and daughters. And he also used to teach at USC in LA as well as the Manhattan School of Music. So Zlatomir, I have another video to share, but I wanted to ask you a quick question from another audience. Is there a major difference between performing in a competition, a major competition, and a concert, like a regular concert?
I would say I don't feel that there is, and I try not to think of them so differently. It especially helps when, for example, at the Tchaikovsky competition, the performances are open to the public, because then you feel like you're not only playing for the jury, but you're also playing for people who came to enjoy your playing.
Yeah.
So I would say it depends, but of course some competitions are more like auditions where you're basically playing for just a handful of people, and who are all experts. So that can sometimes be quite nerve-wracking.
So I guess the Tchaikovsky competition was the worst combination. You have the experts sitting in the audience, you have the live audience. Um, well, so any secret you want to share with young cellists or young musicians here? How do you prepare for a concert?
Oh well, just try to practice as much as possible, and practice correctly, practice with intention. Um, One of my favorite things to do, which I know is a lot of musicians sort of disagree with me, but I love studying other people's recordings. I find a lot of inspiration from what other people have done, and I find that when I listen to a recording that's really excellent of a piece that I'm preparing, I often I consider it like free knowledge, because this other person who has learned this piece has thought a lot about it and devoted a lot of time to their interpretation, and I can take the elements from that interpretation that I like and instantly incorporate them into my own performance of it. So that's one of the big things. But also at the same time, whenever you get up on stage, you never really feel ready. So you have to learn how to plunge right into it with only a sense of, maybe 80 to 90% that things are going to go all right. But somehow they always turn out fine.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing with us. We have another poll question for the audience. Please try to answer this. We're going to go to our next clip. So Zlatomir, we have a audience who asked you that when you right before you go on stage, you have 30 minutes left. You're in the backstage area. What do you do? What do you think about during that moment?
Oof. Well, those, I have to say that the 30 minutes before you go on stage are some of the worst moments that you try not to remember. So, I'm sure you can relate to that, Xiang, as a performer yourself. But the time right before you go on stage tends to pass quicker than most other time in life, because your adrenaline is kicked into overdrive. But I try to just touch up some passages that might be a little more precarious than others. Do some slow sound production work. I find that the biggest element of my playing that I want to feel secure with when I get on stage is the connection with the sound. So just kind of really digging into the instrument, feeling the connection to that sound as you're warming up can really help you feel more secure once you do eventually get on stage.
Yeah, that's great. So the next clip is a Chopin Polonaise that you shared with me. Can you say a few words about this? Who's the pianist and where was this performance taking place?
Sure, sure. So actually quite a recent performance. This happened in early February of this year, And it was a bit of an impromptu concert at the Mariinsky Theater in St. Petersburg. Um, it was organized on 3 days' notice because we were all already playing a concert in Munich that previous weekend, and the concert went well. So Maestro Gergiev, Valery Gergiev, who is the director of the Tchaikovsky competition, wanted to do sort of a repeat encore performance in Russia. So we all went to St. Petersburg and we did this performance. And the pianist is Mao Fujita, absolutely extraordinary pianist who was one of the prize winners at the 2019 Tchaikovsky competition in the piano division.
Oh, really? Great. Okay, here we go. Bravo, that's wonderful. One of the questions is, what is your view on new music and how do you learn a new piece of music that's not standard repertoire and in a short amount of time? You don't have a lot of recordings or no recordings at all. How do you process?
Well, for me, the first step is always just to try to understand where the composer was coming from. I think a lot of what makes new music challenging for both the performer and the listener is that the thought processes behind the composition are often more hidden. And I think it's the job of a great performer to expose those thought processes and make them more evident to the audience through their interpretation. Yeah, so that's what I try to do with every new piece.
Great. So the answer to the earlier questions is that Zlatomir actually practices between 3 and 4 hours every day. And we do have another question. During the final round of the Tchaikovsky competition, usually they have a professional orchestra, symphony orchestra, accompanying the finalists. What orchestra was that last June performing with Zlatomir? Please answer this question as soon as you can. Anyways, I have a piece that you recently performed. Can you share with us? Is a new piece of music by Luciano Berio. Can you say a few words about this piece, please?
Absolutely. So this is another piece that I performed at the Tchaikovsky competition last June, and this is the Sequenza number 14 by Luciano Berio. It was inspired by the drumming rhythms of Sri Lankan traditional Kandyan drumming, and it was composed in close collaboration with the phenomenal Sri Lankan cellist Rohan Desaram, who is also a virtuoso Kandyan drummer. So you can see at the beginning in this clip how Berio instructs the performer to use the body of the instrument as percussion.
Have you been to Sri Lanka yourself?
No, I have not actually. I would love to go sometime.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. I love this clip so much. I think you know everything about their culture. So let's try this. That's really great. Love it. The orchestra that performed with you during the final round of Tchaikovsky that we heard earlier, the Rococo, was St. Petersburg Philharmonic. That's great. That orchestra is unbelievable. It's very special. So we wanted to ask you, one of the audience members also asked, can you possibly play for us for a few minutes? Even though we know Wi-Fi speed varies from home to home, just would be lovely to hear you from your living room.
Yes, I would love to. I will just take a minute to reconfigure my setup, and I'll play a movement of Bach for all of you.
So here is Zlatomir Fung from Massachusetts, his sunroom at home. What do you have in store for us?
All right. Well, thank you so much for your patience. I'll play the Sarabande from J.S. Bach's Suite Number 1 for solo cello.
We'll love that. Thank you. Bravo. So everybody out there, the answers to the previous two questions. The first question, the answer is he's never played violin. He has played trumpet, viola, and piano. Oh my goodness. And then the only thing that he doesn't do as a hobby is skiing. So he plays chess, video games. Well, that's great. I'm glad. Can you share with us the bow and the cello you're playing these days?
Absolutely. So the cello I play on is a Hill from 1905. Hill meaning W.E. Hill and Sons, the big shop in London. And the bow I play on is an old French bow made around 1800 by Jean-Pierre Marie Persois.
Great. And do you consider yourself, I mean, you're a professional soloist right now, but do you consider yourself still open to entering other competitions?
I've actually I announced last year my retirement from competitions,
Oh,
so I don't intend to enter anymore.
I see. What other styles of music do you play other than classical?
I play exclusively classical, actually, but I did take an improvisation class once,
Okay.
and based on jazz. Yeah.
Hey, you're doing not too bad for yourself. Uh, so I like to ask you, who were your major teachers growing up in cello?
So, so I began with the Suzuki method actually, and I had a wonderful teacher in Corvallis, Oregon. Her name was Anne Gravy. And then when I moved to the Boston area, I switched to another wonderful Suzuki teacher, Nancy Hare. And then I studied with Emmanuel Feldman. And then I began working with Richard Aaron in 2013. And I also worked with Julie Albers. And when I entered Juilliard, I began to take lessons with Timothy Eddy.
So we have a special guest in the audience who would like to say hello and ask you a few questions. Professor Richard Aaron is here in the audience. I don't know if you knew, but I would like to welcome him to our screen. Richard is a good friend, and he's a faculty cellist at the Juilliard School and as well as the University of Michigan School of Music, Theater, and Dance. Richard actually is also one of the most respected cello pedagogues in the world. And he and I, we have met a long, long time ago, and I'm so glad he's making time today for us. Richard, are you out there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you for inviting.
Thank you for being here with us. And Zlatomir, you know each other. So I just wanted to tell Richard in front of everybody, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to play golf with you very soon. And, you know, last year when we were having dinner late night on Plymouth Road in Ann Arbor, Michigan, you introduced me to Zlatomir. You said, this young man is an amazing cellist and you should feature him. So we're very honored and very glad things are working out. He's coming to perform his debut recital in Delaware next year. And thank you for connecting us. How are you doing? How are things in Michigan?
Very good. But if we do play golf, we'll be at least 8 to 12 feet apart.
Yes, exactly. Can you share with us your experience so far with Zlatomir? When did you first meet him? Where did you hear his play? And was he Tchaikovsky gold medalist material back then to you?
From birth, he was Tchaikovsky material. I met him at a summer program, and he was remarkable when the first time I heard him. But what really distinguishes Zlatomir different from most people is that he has a qualities that are very unique. He has an amazing coordination. You all saw that on the videos. He has an incredible memory, so that what he learns, he truly understands and understands deeply what he's doing. And the third thing is that what you can't teach is that he has taste. And taste is something, I think he gets taste by really being interested in the history of cello playing and music and chamber music. He really listens to music and he hears what tasteful playing is, and then he emulates that.
That's great to hear that from you. You know, you're a pioneer in the field of cello playing, cello education. Is there any special moment or a special concert or lesson that you remember you could share with us?
Yes, one of the greatest moments I ever had with Zlatomir is he gave a master class at the University of Michigan, and it was an incredible class. But the whole class, I was looking at him, and he had white socks on, so it bothered me. So I went to Costco, and I bought him a half a dozen pair of black socks, and he promised me the rest of his life he'll only have black socks on when he's in public. And so that was one of the great moments we had together, that we went to Costco and bought black socks together.
That's great. That's funny. Zlatomir, what about Mr. Aaron's teaching? Anything that you can share with us, any special moments, anything that benefit you tremendously ever since you start working together?
Sure, of course. Well, you'll be happy to know that I'm actually wearing black socks right now, and I'm wearing one of the pairs that you bought me. But what you omitted in your story is that you accidentally purchased women's socks. But I ended up wearing them anyway because they're very comfortable. So.
Did not know that.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm really grateful that I met Mr. Aaron, and he's probably been the most important force in my musical life. And I think what distinguishes him as a teacher is that he really understands methodology. A lot of teachers nowadays, they don't have a system that they can use to help every student improve to their maximum potential. And he really believes in rigorous routine of technical work and using that as a foundation for all further study. So I learned so much from him, and I continue to. Very happy that.
Wonderful. Richard, do you have anything to ask Zlatomir in public? Any big questions?
Well, I think what I would ask is what I think a lot of people would want to ask him, and I think a lot of people are kind of asking questions about Zlatomir, is that what are the thinking process that you feel you need to learn a piece, and what's the thinking process of how to really understand music when you're learning a piece? What's your process of learning?
Well, as I mentioned a little bit before with the barrio, the first thing I want to do is sort of break down a piece of music into its smaller components and understand the thought process of the composer. Often I think that very successful performances of music make it abundantly clear, but not in a didactic way about the structure of the music. So in other words, you feel that the structure is coming to you through the performance, but you're not consciously aware of it. In other words, it makes sense to you. Like the sort of the grammar of the performance is logical and correct. So that would be my first sort of thought as I'm looking at a piece of music. I sometimes mark where I think the phrases begin and end, and then sort of the hierarchy of those phrases. And then I think a lot of it has to do with just internalizing the music beyond that, really trying to find what the music is telling you emotionally, and then incorporate that into the way that you're performing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you're very successful at that.
Thank you. I try, but of course it's a work in progress always, and there's still so much. I think the biggest thing is that no matter how much we do, we can always be more ambitious about our musical imagination, and so been thinking about that a lot recently.
Well, Zlatomir and I talk a lot about you have to think about future, and I really believe even times like this are rather odd because he won't be able to be performing in public for some time now. But I really do believe that Zlatomir will be an amazing teacher because he has a lot of insight into his own playing and also when he hears other people playing. So I envision him, even though he's 21 now, that I envision Zlatomir to be really an amazing pedagogue in the next 20 years. And that we're hoping that in the next 20 years he could develop doing that, because I feel he'll be very good at it.
Zlatomir, do you have any specific plans to become a teacher in the future? Do you love it? Do you want to become a teacher?
You know, recently it's been on my mind, and I find that I actually learn a lot from it, and it brings things to my own playing and my own thought process in my practice. So certainly, it's something that I'll be thinking about in the next few years.
Great. So I have a video that you wanted to share with the audience. I don't know if Richard worked on this with you. Would you share with us what this piece is about and when was the performance?
Sure. So this is a short clip from this piece by Esa-Pekka Salonen called Urta 3. Many of you may know Salonen as a conductor, but he's also, of course, a phenomenal composer. And this piece was written in the late 1980s. And it was part of a set of virtuoso solo pieces, sort of like the Barrios Sequenzas. The particular narrative of this piece is that it's an extension of Scriabin's piano work, Vers la Flamme, which is about a moth that encircles a flame. And Salonen in this piece envisions what would happen if the moth actually touched the flame and caught on fire and essentially was immolated. And so therefore it's a very violent piece and a very sad piece, but it's filled with a lot of sort of rustling, and the clip that you're about to see will include that.
Wow, I love that color. What was that technique when you play softly, almost like ponticello with the left hand, but not much sound? What's that called?
Well, he didn't specify specifically. The marking is that it's an extremely fast tempo, essentially unplayable, but that's kind of the idea, is just to play it as fast as possible. And he marks it 3 pianos, like pianissimo. Yeah, so it's a very, very exciting passage.
Yes, we're going to move on to the end of this program. Richard, I want to thank you so much for making time for us. And I wish you a healthy and safe summer. And particularly, I want to thank you for preparing and helping this young American cellist to achieve so much at such a young age. And I'm sure he's going to follow your footsteps to become the next amazing teacher for the next generations to come in the cello world. Do you have anything else to say before we say goodbye?
He's had wonderful training from many people, and he's really just developed now. He's a finished product. But I think it's important to note that Zlatomir, you should talk about how you played it for Salonen, and that's why he worked up the piece, and that was a really, I think, a interesting experience for you. But I wish to say thank you very much, and wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
So Zlatomir, would you share with us, you performed this or played this in front of the composer, for the composer?
Yes, so I was learning it in the summer of 2017, and I would say probably without a doubt that it's the most difficult piece that I've ever tackled in my life. And it took me a solid 4 months to learn it, practicing it intensively every day. But it was all worth it because I had the chance to play it for Salonen himself. And when I played it for him, I really, the way he spoke about it really made me understand what he was going for. And he was the one who said that the piece was sad. And that's not really something that I would have associated with it after having learned it, but I kind of understood what he meant after he said that. So very, very meaningful.
We have a special video to share as our finale. Before that, I want to thank everybody out there for being here. We will share your questions with Zlatomir, and then we'll send the information about upcoming Backstage Pass online artists on Saturdays at 3 p.m. to you.
Well, thank you so much, Xiang. I really appreciate, you and thank you so much to all the behind the scenes team who are, handling the tech elements. And I want to thank all of you who have tuned into today's event. And we really appreciate you being here. And thank you so much for all your questions, and apologies that we couldn't get to everything in our limited time. Um, and I hope to see you all next year at the recital in May 2021. To finish today's program, we'd have a little sort of surprise treat. I won't say too much about it, but this is a video from a few years ago, and I hope you all enjoy it.